anyways, I will let you know what I've done ahead. Okay, I'm not going to keep you in the dark to anything, but I want to know about you. I want to know why you're here. I want to know I'm genuinely curious why you take cooking classes.
Because I want the information.
I was actually calling on her. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Sorry,
See, I plant her in every demo I do, and she's so quick with these wonderful comments. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, actually, we'll let her finish, huh? Okay. No, your father was a chef, actually, and you mentioned some things, you know, as I've seen you regularly out there at the Saturday market here in Eagle, and I'm really glad that you keep coming, so I'm sorry to put you on the spot there. I feel horrible now. Okay, tell me, I'm genuinely curious, what can I do for you?
I love food, family, and friends.
Okay,
And so I'm always looking to improve
very good.
the quality of what I serve.
Okay, nice, very good. Anyone else? Sure.
I heard that you also do toenails in the corner.
That begins at 4 p.m., baby. We're going to class.
I tasted your soup last weekend at the
Oh,
bazaar. That's
okay.
where we were.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so I was impressed with your presentation
Oh, you're so
there.
nice.
And so I thought you were a doctor at first.
I was just sitting there in shorts and a t-shirt, actually, selling pawning soups, hawking soup.
So anyway, I wanted to follow up on that
Oh,
and
you're
see
so
what
nice.
you had to offer.
Very good. Well, welcome. Welcome.
Do you have any cookbooks available?
You know what? I have so much curriculum from hundreds of classes I've done, and I have some on disc, I have some in hard copy. I have it all in different forms, and I frankly don't know how to publish a cookbook. So if anyone is in that industry, let's talk.
Oh.
So
Okay.
I have so much material, but it sits in my files or in a corner, you know, shoved in a corner. So I'm a food guy, you know what I mean? I don't know how to do that, but I know.
Oh, great.
I have the information. So, all right. So, yeah, I've done radio. Hell, let's just pack this stuff up and talk about other stuff. I used to host a radio program on KBOI here in Idaho, and someone else does it now. And you know, well, I don't know. I don't know how to do that either. So I do what I do, and you know, I guess in branching out, I suppose it's a matter of surrounding oneself with people who know those industries. So, if you know those industries. All right, so do you like to cook? Who likes to cook? How many of you approach a kitchen with trepidation? How many of you both? Right? Okay. My first cooking class I took in summer school between 5th and 6th grade. I'm one of 5 sons. I was always in the kitchen with my mom. And that summer, I went home every day and made French toast. You know, and I didn't know it would lead to a culinary, career in culinary arts. And nor would I necessarily recommend someone take that course. But so, anyways, there's the coils. Remember the old electric stoves, right? They're perfect height. I don't know how old you are in 5th or 6th grade, but that was my height on the stove. And so, anyways, now I do a variety of stuff, and I'm glad that Janice, raise your hand. Janice, give her a big hand for putting this together for you guys. Okay. So Janice handles the classes here for the adult education at the library today. Let's see. What are we doing? We're doing a squash bisque. You can also find this recipe in the Eagle Independent. I provided that to the paper this month. Next month, I'm not sure what I'll provide, but every month, keep an eye on that newspaper, and you'll get a recipe. So, sesame twist. There's a lot we can do with puff pastry. I buy these sheets. You can pass this around. Puff pastry sheets. They're found in the frozen food section near the pie crusts and phyllo dough. And so we'll talk more about that when I actually use it. So, squash bisque. What's a bisque? You didn't know you didn't know there'd be a quiz, right? It's a soup, generally it's pureed, but generally more thick than I make it. It commonly has shellfish or seafood of some kind pureed into it. But I looked there's an excellent reference book called Food Lover's Companion. I love that book. It's a small little reference dictionary of all things food. And bisque, it actually says a thick pureed soup, usually with some shellfish, something like that. But frankly, I don't like it thick. I don't like thick, pasty soups. Okay, it needs to have enough body to where it coats the tongue and feels substantial, but I will thin this with some coconut milk, okay? So this is, meatless. You could, of course, Let's see, how many of you like squash? Have made things like pumpkin soup and stuff like that? 'Tis the season, huh? Right, so you have these hard winter squash, I know I do. I made a pretty good haul at the end of the Saturday market when all the farmers said, here, Gord, I'll take this. It's the last day of the Saturday market. And so I had a variety sitting around. And so I roasted some squash, okay? Now you could do this with pumpkin squash. I think I listed some options there for you. Did I not? You could use pumpkin, you could use, did I not list options? Clumsy me, gee whiz. There is a butternut squash. Here is an acorn squash. This is a little pumpkin. It's probably like a sugar pumpkin of some kind that one would use for pies. This is something like a blue Hubbard, even though it wasn't called a blue Hubbard and had a slightly different shape, but it looked like one. Banana squash is an excellent alternative. Banana squash is like a huge football, okay? And you'll find it in the stores cut into chunks. Seeds already taken out. Banana squash is an excellent substitute also for pumpkins if you're gonna make pumpkin pie, okay? So, can you use whatever kind of squash you want? Yes. Yes, it's okay. Now you will find chefs that try to micromanage every single detail when you're cooking, and that ain't me. Okay, so I want to leave you options because I think if you're growing a certain kind of squash or have some that was given to you, or want to take this recipe in an entirely new direction and not even use squash, I think you should have that liberty. I think you should be able to use this formula as a template for many, many different flavor variations that you're going to choose, okay? Because, you know, if you want, well, I'll pose a question, do you need to follow a recipe exactly? Yes, if you want the exact result the author of that recipe wanted. But who's to say his or her opinion is any more valid than yours? Even in baking and pastry, yes, you can vary things. Okay, if you know the rules, if you know the function of the ingredients. In this case, it's a soup. So the rules are fairly lax. Okay, you have a lot of latitude for options and so forth. At the Eagle Saturday Market a month or so ago, I made a southwestern version of a squash. Actually, it's longer than a month now because it's been a couple months ago. I made a southwestern version. So I used smoked paprika. Instead of the ginger and the curry spice and the lime and the coconut milk, I used smoked paprika, chili powder, cumin, and coriander. And so you do a southwestern version. Or you could keep it a fairly traditional squash soup type flavor profile and use maybe savory or sage, okay? And serve it with some toasted squash seeds or pine nuts or something like that, yeah?
Which version did you make at Rachel Kay's?
At the dinner at Rachel Kay's, I did this version, right here, right there, yeah. Yep, and this is the version I also have, it's in the Eagle Independent, so, okay, you know what? What I'm going to do first, though, before we proceed with this soup, I'm actually going to make some twists, some more twists, just because I see we're filling up. And so our oven's still on, right? Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk puff pastry, guys. These are puff pastry twists. They're light and flaky, a little too light and flaky. It's not tragic. These become what's called cook snacks, all right? So these make a great vertical element for a spread, like where you may have some fruit and some cheese and some other hors d'oeuvres and stuff like that. And so if you have a board or maybe a chunk of marble slab, a tile, nice piece of wood, or whatever platters you have, put something like this on there next to the grapes and the cheese and the veggies and the whatever, okay? So puff pastry is light and crisp and flaky, okay? So why don't we go ahead and, you can reuse these parchment sheets, by the way, but I don't know if we're gonna need to. Let me offload these on you. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is show you what I did with this puff pastry. We'll get this out of the way, get these baking. That way, when we serve the soup, we'll probably just serve it with the puff pastry. Or if we feel like it, we'll pass it out ahead of time, whatever. I would have a more strict timeline if you paid for the glass, sorry. Just kidding. You didn't like that one? Someone the other day said, well, do you make stocks? Do you make your own stocks? Well, yeah, I make my own stocks. But whether or not you're going to get them all depends on the price tag. I don't know. You know? I'm serious. This is reality, guys. You can get wonderful stocks that are made. Like in the, heck, you can get whatever they call broth in a can. Choose the low sodium. Don't use bouillon cubes because they're mostly salt. Okay, if you do use a base that you hydrate, that you add water to which you add water, you want to make sure the first ingredient is not salt. Make sure it's whatever vegetables or chicken, whatever. Make sure salt's down there on the list. So I'll use bases sometimes. Sometimes I'll use the containers that have a little screw top and screw it on, put it back in your fridge. And I also, yes, I make stocks, okay? But usually, it just, they are used for certain events. So, anyways, questions so far? So you're seeing that box. It's Pepperidge Farms. It's $3.50 at Winco, $4.50 at Albertsons. Okay, it's 2 sheets. Can you grab what? Hey, I'm in the same boat you guys are. Okay, now when I own my shops, I do have a dough sheeter, and I did make my own doughs, including puff pastry. And it's wonderful if you want to. Can you grab the puff pastry? All of them. So yes, I make doughs as well. But right now I don't have my sheeter parked anywhere. It's in storage right down the road. And puff pastry is what's called a laminated dough. So you have the dough, and then you have a butter block that's put in there as if let's say this was the dough. Thank you. If this was the dough, you would mix the dough, which is called detrimp, and then you put the butter in there, and then you fold the dough over there, and then you do a series of what's called turns, where you take and you roll out the dough, and a single turn or a threefold is if you go like this, and then you let it rest in the fridge for at least 30 minutes, preferably 60, and then you turn it again, turn it 90 degrees, and so you're rolling it out in different ways each time, but the objective is to get many, many layers of dough and butter dispersed. Okay, these are called laminated doughs. Puff pastry is a laminated dough. Croissant dough is a laminated dough. Danish dough is also laminated. Danish dough and croissant dough are also leavened with yeast, though. So a Danish dough or a croissant dough, you have layers, right? Flaky layers. But you have no organic leavening or chemical leavening in puff pastry. What's a chemical leavener? Something like a baking soda or powder or baking ammonia and things like that. Okay, those are chemical leaveners. Yeast isn't an organic leavener. Puff pastry is leavened simply mechanically. The fact that you have water and dough and fat in many, many layers, millefeuille would be the French term, which makes reference to nearly 1,000 layers. And if you did the math, if you began with 3 layers, dough, butter, dough, and folded that out and did 4 folds, which I showed you the 3-fold, which is called a single turn, a 4-fold, and I know we're not making our own dough, so this is just a little background historical. 4-fold is also called a bookfold, like that. And so if you do 4 4-folds, do the math, you'll have nearly 1,000 layers. Okay? So, there you go. So mechanically leavened, what's that? Oh yeah, the fact that we have fat and dough, which there is moisture in these things, and what happens to moisture when it gets hot? It expands, and so that's what causes the separation of the layers, a light and flaky product. Cool? Good. So this is one of these packages have 2 sheets, and actually tell you what, we're not going to use this one. So one of these sheets actually yields about 2 of these half-sheet baking pans, which is some standard sort of baking sheet, jelly roll sheet, whatever you have on hand. And they come folded, so you need to thaw these, but they need to be chilled to work well with them. Okay? If you try to take them apart when they're frozen, you're going to break it. And so you're already going to have a little bit of damage on the seam, and usually it's not a major issue, but you can see that. You can see how it's cracked a little bit when I unfold it, but it's not a big deal, okay? However, when I cut my twists, I am going to cut them this way, because if that had weakened it significantly and I cut them this way, my twist would be breaking more than you saw them break. Oh, you must handle it very gently, by the way. So this is a French pin. I don't care what kind of rolling pin you use, but you know what? I'm just going to take a look at your recipe, because when I wrote this, I was actually envisioning a larger sheet, because you can buy puff pastry. 1 teaspoon of salt may be too much, or if you're using like a flake kosher salt, which doesn't sit as packed in the spoon like a fine granulated salt would, that's probably pretty close if you have a flake salt. Okay, but take it easy on the salt. If you're using granulated salt, 1 teaspoon would be way too much. This dough is neutral. So in other words, it's not really salty, but it's not sweet either. Now, puff pastry is the pastry dough that's commonly used to make turnovers, apple turnovers, cherry turnovers, and heck, you can cut tops and bake them separately and put them on top of a chicken stew, and you have a makeshift sort of chicken pot pie, something like that. Puff pastry is really versatile. You can take it in a sweet direction, you can take it in a savory direction. If you want to make cinnamon twists, just take some cinnamon sugar, roll it into the surface, just like you're going to see me do with these other things. Cut them, you have cinnamon twists. So, okay? Cool questions. I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm not going to measure. You're using your senses, right? Now, let's say you want to make some cheese twists. Parmesan, Asiago, Romano, Grana Padano, some kind of hard cheese, Manchego, something like that. Hard cheeses work best, and you're going to grate those hard cheeses, the Parmesan or whatever. And if you're doing a cheese twist, don't add salt because the cheese has salt. Okay, you'll be too salty. Why I have salt written in here is because, is there salt in these sesame seeds? Probably not. Probably not. Okay, so all you do is roll that into the surface. See? You're not looking to really enlarge this too much, though I do a little bit. I do enlarge it a little bit. And I like to use these Starlight Herbs. How many of you use their product, Starlight Herbs? They have excellent product here, local. They're here in Eagle. StarlightHerbs.com. Oh, I actually have some of their brochures over there. I have like a dozen of them if you want. Go over there and grab those. So, because I use a bunch of their other stuff too. You'll see me use it in a minute. So let's get rid of that and that. Okay, so am I rolling the dough out a lot or just a little? The main objective is to press the ingredients, press those seasonings into the surface of the dough. There we go, okay? All right. Now to cut, in your recipe, I actually suggested that you twist the ends in opposite directions as you lay it on the sheet, and I do that frequently. However, I found this, I hadn't found it for some time, but I was going through some stuff the other day, and I found this little fluted scallop edge cutter. And so because this puts a little decorative twist on each side, yeah, it remains somewhat distinct, but I don't twist them when I use this. So if you don't have a little pizza cutter like a wheel, roller cutter, then just simply use your knife. But if you're using a roller cutter, by using the rolling pin as a guide, it makes it really slick and quick. And you are in control of how narrow or wide you make these strips. I didn't specify in your recipe, okay? Is it bad that I write a really concise recipe and leave you freedom? See, there's far more. Some of you go, well, how wide, whatever. And it's okay if you want to write it down. I don't know, how wide is that? You can go to a ½ inch or a ¼ inch. Frankly, I don't care. Really, I don't really care. If they're more slender, they will break more readily. If you're going to transport them, you might want them more durable, a little wider. Yes?
Is there a difference in timing on cooking them?
There will be a nominal time difference, sure. But here's the thing, even then, if I were to write an exact time, I don't know your oven. There's a lot of variables. I don't know if you worked quick enough to where this dough is still chilled like it is right now, or if it came to room temperature. I don't know if your oven's perfectly calibrated. I don't know. So when I give a time on a recipe, it's an approximate. You're going to check it about halfway through, because most ovens are not even, don't bake evenly, and so you want to turn the pans. And it gives you a 360-degree view. For example, we're going to have 2 pans in there, and about 7 or 8 minutes into baking, we're going to check it and turn the pan. Why? It gives you a 360-degree view, but we're also going to rotate top to bottom. Why? Because especially in the electric ovens, you have that heat source coming right from the bottom. So it's a real good idea, actually, if you have an electric oven with a heat coil sitting right there on the bottom. If you have a pizza stone, which is a ceramic tile, park it in the bottom, position one of those racks on the very bottom, right above that, put a pizza stone there, leave it there forever. You don't have to always bake on it, but you have a buffer there. Plus you have something that takes on heat and holds it and puts it up gently, and your oven will be more even. Because the natural cycle of an oven is to heat up till the thermostat says we're good, and then kicks it off, and then it dips to a certain point till the thermostat says, hey, we need some more heat. And so you have high and low, high and low. If you can maintain a more steady oven temperature, your products will be better. So I'm not going to twist these, but if you did twist them, twist in opposite directions. And don't twist too far, just go to there. Because if you keep twisting, it's actually going to then bind on itself. Just keep twisting. Come on, man, bind on itself already. Gee whiz, proving me wrong. There we go. See how at some point you over twisted? Okay, see, it becomes a coil. Okay. So, anyways, twist a little bit until it looks nice and pretty. Or to your liking. Cool. All right. Any questions so far? So can you make savory, can you make a variety of flavored savory twists? What else would you use? Okay, that'd be sweet. Hold on, we'll get to sweet in a second. Okay, so savory would be some cheese. Would you add salt if you're gonna put cheese on there?
No.
Why?
Because the cheeses are.
Most cheese has salt already. And do you want to use a hard cheese or some soft cheese? One of the hard cheeses, because the soft cheeses are more likely to take on more color quickly and could burn. Yeah?
Could you hold your hand up to see how far apart you are?
Oh, by all means. Very good. That's an excellent question. Thanks. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, you don't have to give them too much room. And yes, if you cut them thin, for example, that slender one right there is more likely to bake more quickly than that thick one. But guess what I did? I put that thick one on the edge, because that edge is more likely to bake quicker than that center. So there's a lot of variables. That's why it's hard to give an exact time and temperature for your oven. Now, some people assume they can give all these details and they'll be right on, but it's not always the case, okay? And I'm not gonna flatter myself thinking I can, okay?
Would you use the pizza stove technique in a gas oven also?
You know what, you can, and again, you don't have to always bake on the stone. But regardless of the type of oven, you're gonna have better results with your oven, but especially so with an electric oven.
And it doesn't block the heat?
No, it's beneficial. It'll take a little longer for your oven to preheat, but it actually takes on the heat, and clay takes longer to heat up, and then it puts off that heat over time. You see, and that's really beneficial because air itself is not a good conductor of heat. Huh? What's that mean? Okay, air, why can you stick your hand in a 450-degree oven but cannot stick it in a 212-degree pot of water? Because water conducts heat better than air. Plain and simple. So if you have a convection oven, the manufacturers of the oven are actually trying to do you a favor in that they have this sort of wind chill factor working in reverse, in that if you can slam hot air against the side of the product, it will bake more efficiently. And it's true. It's true. But sometimes you have to adjust the oven temperature because you don't always know who wrote this recipe and what kind of oven they use. And so that's why in a recipe, time is only one indicator. Your senses will tell you, oh, I smell something cooking. That probably means it's not raw anymore. Am I wrong? You look at it, you see color coming on, right? If it's just starting to brown, it's a whole lot different than browned and cooked all the way through and dry and crisp. Just starting to brown, oh, it's done. Pull it out. The timer went off. Well, the timer doesn't know if it's done either. This is why you have many indicators here, okay? It's going to be X amount of minutes approximately at this temperature, okay? You're going to smell it, so if you forget to set the timer, be sure your senses are on, guys, okay? You're going to look at it. You're going to see that it is brown, and you're going to also take one and break it. Whether by accident or on purpose, break one and cook snacks, right? Right? All in the name of knowing if you have a good product that you're going to serve your guests. So, good questions, guys.
Do you keep your stone in your oven all the time?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea, even if you use the self-clean feature. Don't take your stone out and wash it with soapy water because they're porous and they'll take on that soap and smell funky. And then you won't want to bake bread right on it or pizza right on it. So yeah, now if I did do some pizza and like add some cornmeal or something on there, just once your oven is cool and the stone is cool, take it out and brush it off, put it back in. If you leave your pizza stone in there, or a tile of some kind that can handle the heat, if you do that, then you'll find that periodically you'll have some charged stuff on there. Again, just take it out and brush it off. Do you want to wash your pizza stone with soap? No. Why? Porous. Porous, man. So, all right. So we have twists working.
you eat them immediately or you're supposed to wait 30 days?
I'm sorry?
Eat those immediately or you wait 3
Oh, it's highly advisable that they're all consumed very shortly after baking. If you want to save them, keep them airtight, do not refrigerate. Refrigerators have humidity. And when you want something light and flaky and crispy, do you want humidity around? No. No, keep it sealed from air, room temperature, and that's where you want your puff pastry stored. What did I say, up to 3 days? Okay, several days?
Several days.
Okay, sure. Oh, I forgot to show you how to make a pretzel. We'll save that for another class. Okay, so we talked about some savory versions of the twist. Sweet versions, you said cinnamon and sugar? Okay. What about taking some sliced almonds or slivered almonds, or even some ground almonds or hazelnuts, and toss them with a little bit of sugar, and take that and roll it in, cut the strips, and then you can twist it, and then you can make a pretzel out of it. But sorry, I didn't show you how to make a pretzel. So you're going to have to talk to Janice here and say, Janice, we want a pastry class for December. Raspberry jam, maybe after the fact. How about that? Oh, tell you what, check this out. Take your puff sheet, roll just sugar into it. I'm glad you said that. Now I have a whole other thing I can talk about. Not that I need to kill any time, though, really. I'm going to be hard pressed to finish this in an hour anyways. Take that sheet of puff pastry, sprinkle sugar on both sides, roll it into the surface, right? And then cut squares or cut shapes with cutters or triangles or rectangles or whatever you want, whatever suits your purpose. And then just bake those blanks, just like that. And then keep them on hand. And then what you can do, the top will puff up some. What I'll do is I'll use those as like a tart shell. It's sort of more rustic. Okay, it's not perfectly formed in a fluted, really, scalloped edge tartlet tin. But you can take those little blanks that you've rolled into sugar, so you've applied sugar to them, and that sugar will caramelize nicely. And again, when we bake them, we want them dry and crisp all the way through, right? Not doughy and chewy. So if you've ever had a Napoleon from someplace and it was doughy and chewy, was the puff pastry baked properly? No, it wasn't. It should not be pale. It should not be chewy. It should not be doughy. The puff pastry is best enjoyed if baked thoroughly, dry, crisp, flaky. Okay? But what you have here is you have a sweetened blank, I call them, just a pastry base that you can then knock in the center a little bit and fill it with a little pastry cream or something, or some fresh whipped cream, or some whatever you want. Whatever you want. Top with a couple fresh raspberries. That's what the price information is. Yeah, absolutely. Here's what you do. You take some, if you don't want to make a pastry cream, take like an instant jello pudding, or vanilla, sorry, not brand specific. Take an instant vanilla pudding, and then then what you do is you disguise it. So take some Nutella, some hazelnut paste, and stir that into the pudding, and whip some fresh cream. Sweeten it only very slightly, or don't even sweeten it at all, because the pudding is sweet already, right? So take some whipped cream, fresh, right? Whip it up, splash of vanilla, and you fold this and think equal ratio, okay? So you have this much pudding that is flavored somehow. You have this much whipped cream, heavy cream, whipping cream, whatever, and fold that into there, and then you've made your own pastry cream, flavored however you want. Put some of that in there, top with a couple berries or whatever.
You put the Nutella, you're not gonna do that in equal parts.
Oh, no, just enough Nutella to flavor the paste, the custard. Uh-huh. I actually use some hazelnut paste from Italy, and it's not called a praline paste because there would be sugar, by definition there would be sugar if it was called a praline paste, but it's a hazelnut paste. It's just simply ground hazelnuts. So it's like Nutella but minus the milk chocolate and all the sugar. Okay, so it's just the nut paste. Yeah, and that's wonderful. It's praline. So once you sweeten, I know the definition of praline. I apprenticed. Slow down. I apprenticed with Swiss chefs, and I know the definition of praline to be candied almonds or hazelnuts, not praline pecans like here in the South. Okay, which is generally the American definition of praline. So when I say praline, it's something that has been flavored and sweetened, but it has nuts, either hazelnut or almonds. Okay, so I know people who are allergic to almonds, and so even if I said nuts of some kind, like if you were going to do puff pastry variation with nuts, use whatever you have. Okay, I don't want want you to make a special trip to the store if you have one thing that is acceptable, but the recipe says something else. I want you to use your judgment, what you have available, or just win them, you know, preference. So here's some vegetable stock. Here's some squash I roasted. It was the other half of the squash that I scooped out, just so we didn't have an exercise in scooping out squash. You do want to leave the skin behind generally. Now, when it comes to roasting the squash, I want to. Yeah, I can see the flame better inside than out there at the Saturday market. Out there, I'm kind of cooking by braille. Oh, I guess it's off. I see a lot of people cut the squash and put it cut side down. And there's a benefit to that in that those edges then don't get dry and crisp from being upright and exposed. However, if you roast them up like this, can you see that there's wonderful moisture that has pooled in that squash? That would have gone onto the pan and burned. Okay, so we have this nice liquid right here. In particularly these two, this little pumpkin and this butternut, because those squash are generally a little more moist anyways. So I did hit the edges of these squash with sesame oil. Prior to roasting. And to prevent the edges from drying out, see, I like that liquid. I want that not burned, but I want that in my soup, okay? Now this little acorn guy didn't have any liquid pooled. Okay, the flesh is relatively thin. This guy will roast in probably about 45 minutes. Some of these other ones, this thicker one, it probably takes, I don't remember, I roasted this one separately because I had a pretty good indicator that, just by looking at it, that this one would probably roast more quickly than this one. Okay, so again, you're using your senses, right? So an hour, if I said to roast for an hour, it's a guideline, and that'll probably satisfy the needs of these smaller ones. But you may be in your oven for 3 hours with this guy. Okay, but it's cool. It's unsupervised time. You're napping, man. Right? You're going shopping.
Cordell, do you ever steam them?
You can sort of, check this out. You can actually cook the squash however you want.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, very different cooking methods, whether you break it down into cubes and into chunks, and maybe just simmer it in your stock at some point in the recipe, or if you steam it, or if you roast it, you're going to have different results. You can do any of them. You can cook it however you want. You can open a can of pumpkin or a can of sweet potatoes and make this soup. Okay? But you could also use this as a template. So I have aromatic vegetables. As I talk, I'm going to build this soup. This is our aromatic vegetables. It's in your recipe. I started it in a little bit of oil. Okay? You can use this soup, adding our vegetable stock, and I'm doing a batch, probably double to your recipe. What did I say, 2 pounds of squash? I have about 3.5 pounds of squash right there. Okay, so it's not quite a problem. Okay, you can use this recipe as a template also. Heck, again, you can use a can of pumpkin to make this if you want. But here's the thing. Let's say you take a vegetable like a carrot or a potato or something like that. Does one that has been boiled taste differently from one that has been roasted?
Yes.
Why? How? Describe the difference. Describe the general flavor profile of something that has been boiled.
Bland.
Relatively bland. It's going to take on some liquid, right? Now, what about roasted? Especially apparent if you roast aromatic vegetables like carrot or onions or garlic. Describe roasted garlic versus raw garlic. Rich. Deeper color, deeper flavor.
Sweet.
It's aromatic still, but it's sweet and it's not as pungent and sharp as the raw product, right? So you can do whatever you want to do. Frankly, I don't like being micromanaged. I'm not going to do it to you, okay? But just understand, you have options, but you also have different results. So frequently someone says, well, but can I use this? Well, of course you can. Oh, how come it didn't turn out exactly that well? How many things did you do differently? Okay, so again, it goes back to that grand old question, do you need to follow a recipe? That depends. It depends. Now, I hope you don't think, hey man, this guy's leaving it way too loose. I really want him to tighten up these directions. Well, follow your recipe. It's okay. It's really concise. It's written really straightforward. And there's far more that I can tell you verbally than I would ever be able to write down in a recipe, okay? So if there's maybe information overload going on, discard it, I don't care. Grab what you want, use what you want, yeah.
Can you roast the squash whole?
You can. I prefer to cut it and take the seeds out, but that's just my preference. Some of those squash are really firm, and if you don't want to use this knife on that thing for fear of danger, for fear of injury, roast it whole, please. Please roast it whole. Yeah. I know someone. I was talking to someone Thursday night. They said, "Well, I do it in the crock pot, a little bit of water, and then I just shove it in there whole." Okay, great. Frankly, I don't mind using my knives, you know what I mean? Now, granted, some of these squash are big and hardy and and so be careful. Please be careful. I don't want you to come back, minus 2 digits, but you cut your squash and roast it in pieces. Please.
Cordell, your vegetable stock,
It was a prepared product. Yeah, I didn't make this one. Sorry.
but do you see that in the store?
Oh yeah, and they vary actually. Vegetable stocks can vary widely, so find a brand that you like. If there's a low sodium option or maybe an organic option, I usually prefer to go that route simply because it's the same price, usually. Some vegetable stock are sort of more clear, because this wasn't too like orange color or anything like that. There's different ones, and I don't remember brand names. I kind of remember how the package looks.
When you make your own?
Oh, you can make your own vegetable stock in an hour's time. It doesn't take a half a day or a day like making a stock where you're extracting the flavors and nutrients from the bones. So, and if we have time, we can talk about stock. Are we cool on the squash? You guys are cool with roasting the squash? We'll talk about stock? Yeah? Yeah? So yeah. Stock is an extraction of flavors and nutrients of whatever you put in the pot. Stock made with bones, when cooled, will be nice and gelatinous. Okay, that stuff is actually good for you. It's, take the supplements like gelatin and chondroitin and that sort of stuff for joints. Guess what? Make your own stock. There you go. If it's gelatinous, there you have it. So stock, if you then season it and get it more close to like a soup or something that will be a more finished component, is then called a broth. Okay, but stock in its most simple and basic definition or form is an extraction of whatever you put in the pot. So let's start with vegetable stock. No, let's start with meat stock. Let's say you wanted to make chicken stock. How many chicken stock? Does this interest you? You can do the same thing with the carcass of the turkey that you're going to have laying around here in a few days. Okay, so you take the chunks. What I usually do is I accumulate enough bones in the freezer until I have a pot, like a little bigger than this, that I use for stock, until I can fill it with maybe 5-6 pounds of bones of some kind. And sometimes I just make sort of a general meat stock because there might be some bones from some elk or some lamb or some pork or some beef or some chicken or some turkey. And so I'll have some bones. Some might have been roasted, some might not have been roasted, and so it may not yield a really dark color, but it may not be really light and white and pristine. Okay, so this is just kind of how I operate on a household level. Okay, so here I am, and I cook something, right? And I'll save the bones in a baggie where? In the freezer, until you have enough what? Or enough bones for a pot. Okay?
Are those bones that are off of something you baked?
Exactly. They're usually you don't just want to go foraging for bones like somewhere. However, I do know the meat aisle at Albertsons, because on the left end, on the close end, if you're coming from the dairy, and I look right there, and they have the things that have been discounted a couple bucks, but I'll also see the big old joints in there too, and I'm like, yeah, 50 cents, $1.50, yeah, and I'll go out of there with armload of bones, and I'm into it for 10 bucks, and I'm like, yes, this is awesome. And I just throw them in the pot with a few other bones from my fridge from like a chicken that I roasted or something like that. And so there you have the bones, okay? Then if you add what's called mirepoix, M-I-R-E-P-O-I-X, that is aromatic vegetables. That's a classic trio of carrot, celery, onions that is used as a foundation for many soups and stocks and sauces. So you take your mirepoix. Heck, if you don't have celery, that's fine. Go ahead. If you have leeks or shallots, go ahead. I don't care. Use some aromatic vegetables. Usually I don't use garlic in a stock because then that locks you into the garlic. I would prefer to come at that later. So you want a general flavor profile that's common to what most people expect. from a soup or a stock or a sauce, okay? And a classic mirepoix, carrot, celery, onion is a great starting point for a stock. So let's say you have 6 pounds of bones, you want about 3 pounds of mirepoix or 2 pounds of mirepoix, okay? I don't care, don't even weigh it, eyeball it. You know what a pound of butter feels like, right? There you go, eyeball it, okay? So you have a pot full of bones and some mirepoix, which is a trio of what? Very good. You also need bouquet garni. Okay, you didn't know this was going to be a language lesson, right? Bouquet garni is parsley, bay, and thyme. Classically tied around a leek leaf, but I don't care about that. Parsley, bay, and thyme, plus some black peppercorns. Yeah, I was classically trained, but I don't worry about a lot of it. It's good to have a foundation knowledge, understanding, even if you're not going to make stock. You're going to learn right now how to make an extraction of flavor. So even if you expedite something and 2 hours later you have something awesome, didn't take all day doing it. Because you understand these basic principles. And I didn't add any ginger or curry splash or lime pepper blend yet, which I did not put that on your recipe, but it's a Starlight Herbs pepper blend. You can check this stuff out later up here. Not like check it out like they do at the library. That lime pepper blend is due back in 2 weeks, please. Sorry for my bad humor, my writers went on strike. So, guess what? I didn't measure it. Oops. What did I say on your recipe? Teaspoon, 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 probably? Teaspoon, some, teaspoon. Did I say fresh ginger on there? 1 tablespoon? Okay. If you're using fresh, do a tablespoon. If you're using dried, you do a teaspoon, or 1/3 of what the fresh would be. Okay? Cool. So, your stock. So you have bones, you have mirepoix, carrot, celery, onion. Sorry. Reaching for it. Bouquet garni, parsley, bay, and thyme. Use like the stems off of fresh parsley that you chop for something else. Use a couple bay leaves. Use a couple of sprigs of thyme. If you're using dried, go very sparingly, please. But a few sprigs of thyme. So there's your bouquet garni. Throw a couple of black peppercorns in there. Cover it with cool water. Bring it to a simmer. And as it simmers over the course of 6, 8, 10, 12 hours, skim off any foam that comes to the top. Okay? We want to get rid of that stuff. There's actually a highly advanced culinary term used to describe that stuff on the top. It's called scum. Okay? You want to get rid of the scum that's on the top of your stock. You don't want to boil your stock. You don't want to stir your stock. Those 3 things, getting rid of the scum, don't boil it, don't stir it, gives you the greater likelihood of having a clear stock, not a cloudy stock. Once you've made the extraction, and you have no salt in there, okay? Please. Okay, once you've made the extraction, you get rid of the solid matter. I'll usually take tongs and get some of it out and then put a colander in the sink, yes, with a vessel under it to receive the liquid. Okay, so something plus colander or strainer, pour into there, not agitating it, not pressing the extra liquid out of that solid matter, because then you can get some cloudy stuff, right? And there's your stock. But don't do anything with it. Chill it overnight, and if there's any fat, it will congeal on the top. You lift it off, and you're going to behold the beautiful gelatinous stock, and you have fat-free stock right there. Okay? At that time, usually I'll take it and I'll reduce it by half. Okay? And if it was a brown stock, or you made that brown stock into a sauce, then reduced it further, it's called a demi-glace, half. Okay? And I'll usually sometimes even reduce it further. Then I put in these little things in my freezer. There's demi-glace.
When you say reduce, you don't mean split water, you just mean boil it.
Reduce is a fancy term for evaporation. Okay, it means you're evaporating off liquid and the concentration is left out. Okay, to reduce.
How much water are you putting in?
Water to cover. To cover, yeah. And if from time to time, if you're simmering this for 12 hours and getting a nice, wonderfully flavored stock, then you may need to add some water from time to time. And the cats, in Europe who wrote this stuff down a couple hundred years ago would say add cool water to it. Because cool to warm makes the extraction. Okay, so if you need to top it off, so it's enough water to cover. Basically, you're going to make stock, you're going to proceed with stock when you have enough to fill the pot. Okay, that much. So 6 pounds of bones, 3 pounds of what? Mirepoix. Nice, you're good. And some bouquet garni. So think a handful, like you're using fresh herbs, fresh thyme, fresh parsley, like the stems, you're thinking about a handful. So you have bones, mirepoix, bouquet garni. Cool.
2 pounds or 3 pounds, 6 pounds?
Yeah, 2 or 3 pounds mirepoix, either. That was a long way around to then talk about vegetable stock. Wow. Vegetable stock, take some mirepoix, supplement it with a few other things. Maybe you have some peppers kicking around. Throw some garlic in there if you want. Throw some cloves maybe a little bit. You have some other vegetables kicking around, throw them in there. And cover with cool water. Bring it to a simmer. Simmer for an hour. Hour and a half if you slept in. And then strain it out. So you can make a shellfish stock or fish stock or vegetable stock in how many hours?
1.
Cool. Good, good. What do we need in here? So we sweat some aromatics or sauteed some aromatics. Okay, I got that going ahead of time just because I have this problem, this kind of like talk about stuff. And so anyways, I wanted to get those aromatics going and putting off their flavor. Softening up, sweet. Then we added stock, we added squash, right? And do we have one kind of squash or several? Is that okay? Can you do it with one kind of squash? Guess what? Use this as a template for doing a curried carrot bisque if you want. Make this with sweet potatoes. Make it with carrots. Make it with whatever you have, whatever you want. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. So anyways, I have some limes here. So those twists come out? Cool, very good. So why don't we, let's finish off this soup. And you know, this is kind of cool. And when I was digging through my spices, I found these Szechuan peppercorns. And all this stuff from Starlight Herbs. And yes, I buy stuff, all right? I'm not being paid for these promos. Darn it. Szechuan peppercorn is awesome. It's got a little some zip to it, like black peppercorn, well, or white peppercorns. But it also has sort of a citrusy flavor to it. It's kind of cool. Let's hit it with a little Szechuan peppercorn, just for kicks. So since we're doing this sort of Asian theme thing, right? Now, before I add any salt, I like this toasted onion salt. Great gift idea, by the way. Oh, that wasn't a hint, by the way. Questions so far? So why don't we go ahead and puree this? Now I'm looking at the consistency right now, and I think it'll puree up nicely. But after I puree it, I'm probably going to judge whether or not I want to add more liquid, because I don't like. You ever wonder what a dude carries around in his toolbox when he does gigs? No? DVDs of the last show. Immersion blender. I used to burn out the cheap little $20 models. So, you know, you get those blue and white coupons in the mail every month. What is it, like Bed Bath Beyond linens and things or something? One of those. So I scored like a $75 mixer for like $65. You know, using one of their coupons. And so yeah, the little $20 jobs, I burn them out regularly. So I don't know if you will, but an immersion blender is a wonderful thing because then you don't need to transfer that to a blender, and you would want to do that in multiple batches if you did. Sorry, do that without touching the extension cord. Okay. Come on. So, when it's going, do not raise above the surface level of the soup. Ask me how I know. What else is in here? My favorite knife, 8-inch Wusthof, a device to sharpen that. Altoids. Microplane grater, instant read thermometer. These are useful things, guys. And you didn't think I was ambidextrous, or sorry, you didn't think I could multitask. I can't, obviously. You got something to say, sir? Huh?
I'll just let
Oh, okay. Mouthing off back there. Hey, you don't have to go. You guys know Dean. Get in here, Dean. Hey.
scared of you.
It's not afraid of me. Dean works security detail for me on occasion.
If you don't have the curry spice blend, this curry like curry, if you don't have the curry spice blend from Starlight Earth, plain curry,
Yeah, curry is a blend. Curry powder is a blend of spices. First of all, who can tell me the difference between an herb and a spice? Herb, the leaf of an aromatic plant. Spice, the seed, root, or bark of an aromatic plant. Seed, fennel, coriander, cumin. Root, horseradish, ginger. Bark, cinnamon. I'm going to add it right now, actually. Thanks for the reminder, buddy. Thank you much. And I'm just kind of holding that plug in there with my foot. It's kind of loose. Coconut milk, it is not sweet. It is not the stuff a bartender would use, like cream of coconut or cocoa, whatever, loco, something. Okay. I think that's what it's called. I don't know. I don't use that other stuff. So, but this is coconut milk. I'll always be asking to use the light version because there is. This says classic coconut milk. You can get light coconut milk. Sure, go ahead. But is there going to be something slightly different? It'll be a little lighter. Plus, when you have a big old batch, and granted, we can probably use half this can in here, really, and have that hint of that coconut playing well with those other Asian flavors, and it would help it be nice and smooth. And, so if you don't have curry powder, which is a blend of spices, including turmeric and a bunch of other things, which turmeric is what is making it yellow, you can use curry paste. There's yellow, red, and green curry pastes, if I'm not mistaken. Take it easy with those because some are hot. Some are really hot. The curry blend will vary slightly from producer to producer, but yeah, it's a blend of spices, the curry. Now, I don't call this a curry squash bisque anymore, because some people go, oh, I don't like curry, and all we have is a hint of that. We have a hint of ginger, we have a hint of curry, a hint of lime, a splash of coconut milk. And so these are subtle, playing well with the aromatic vegetables, including the garlic. And by the way, this is what roasted garlic looks like. It's soft, and I think I said to roast that. Go ahead and pass that around. It's nice and soft and wonderfully aromatic. But it's going to be different than raw garlic, right? I think I specified on your recipe to go ahead and roast that when you roast the squash. Okay? So you guys know the crepe story, right? When I pass stuff around, I don't really want it back. Okay, I'm serious. So I was managing this school in Sacramento, this cooking school, and I had a smaller group than this, but I was doing crepes, and I passed a crepe around so people could feel how thin it was. And Joe Braun, who was my assistant manager, he actually had worked for Tom Rayleigh, if you know the Rayleigh supermarkets. He had actually been the real estate purchaser for Tom, and he had retired from Rayleigh's. Tom Rayleigh had passed away. And Joe Braun was cool. His son actually was on the Olympic volleyball team when they took the gold in Barcelona. And so, anyways, Joe had always thought he wanted my job for some reason. Anyways, but Joe, serious. That was ruthless, man. But Joe was oddly in my class, so Joe's sitting in the back. I passed this crepe around, and I'm like, where's my crepe? I didn't care where the crepe was. I just was wondering where it was, and Joe had eaten it. All right. I like it smooth and velvety, but could you leave it more rustic and chunky if you want? All right. I'm going to keep this on the heat, on a low heat, and I'm just going to keep it on a low heat while I do something with these limes. I already washed them earlier, and this is a microplane. I also have a zester that I love that pulls off the threads. which are wonderful, and it wouldn't matter if I had those threads because then I could just puree it. It wouldn't matter. But this microplane is awesome. It's just a little rasp, and you can get varying sizes of the little blades, you know, for grating hard cheeses and stuff like that. But I do love to use the zest and not just the juice. Hey, you paid for it, right? I mean, what's a lime? It's 20 cents. But if you throw away half of the good flavor, you're into it for 40 cents. Okay? So, yeah, I marvel at how much stuff gets thrown away, not only in homes, but also in commercial kitchens. I was doing some consulting for a place out towards Marsing earlier this year, and their food costs were way up there, and all it took was one day of standing there among their cooks to see where their stuff was going. The cooks didn't understand that when that food came in the back door, it wasn't still just a 20-cent lime. This must automatically assume the price is going to go out the front door. This lime's worth $1 at least, depending on where you want your percentage of food costs. You have to think item by item. So I kind of marvel. Sometimes I'll just take the zest off it, and this will go in my fridge, and a week later I'll get around to using the juice and something. So anyways, what else is going on here? So,
Well, how about giving us some pointers on roasting or turkey?
let's talk cookies first. Oh, no, just kidding. So, roasting turkeys?
Yeah, guys, pointers, good pointers.
Yeah, I sure do. Yep. I like to cut it down the backbone and lay it flat. Breaking some bones while you're doing it, roasting about 2/3 of the time. So you take your pan or take it on the cutting board. There's the bird. So picture the anatomy of the bird, and you have the backbone. I'll take a chef's knife and run it. Watch your fingers, okay? Just run it right down the one side or the other of the backbone, and just lay that sucker flat and roast it like that. A piece of foil to cover the breast meat, and the last 20 minutes or so, take that foil off so that browns up also. That's how I like to roast a bird, whether it's a chicken or a turkey. So season it up with a bunch of herbs, and I didn't add the zest. Comes to me. Season it up with a bunch of herbs. There's classic, thyme and sage, with the Thanksgiving feast. Chefs don't have to cut these. So that's how I like to roast, and I would generally begin something like that to get it going. I would begin on probably 425, 450 maybe, for about 20 minutes. And then I would back it off to about 350 to ride out the rest of the time. And if you're talking about, if you were talking something that would have cooked for 5 hours, or let's say, I don't know, it's kind of a crime. You don't want dry stuff, you know what I mean? Take it to where it reads 165 on a thermometer, which a lot of guides are going to tell you 180 or 185. If you want a dry bird, do that, okay? But it's advisable to pull it in my opinion, to pull it at 165, okay? And you're going to take that reading where the thickest layer of dark meat is. And use an instant read thermometer, or whatever kind of thermometer you have, and make sure you go into the thickest part, like by the thigh. So you have approximate time. It's good. That's going to depend on the size of the bird. Temperatures, but those are only certain indicators. So if you don't have an instant read thermometer or don't trust them, half the time when I'm cooking something, I'm more tactile than the temperature, because these little $5 instant read thermometers, man, I don't always trust them. It's giving me a reading of something else, but I'm going, man, this is reading done when I'm feeling it. And so if you want to take and insert a knife where the joint is, like take the drumstick, where it's kind of the thicker part of the dark meat there, and take it by one of the joints and just make an incision. First of all, see if the joints move freely. That's one indicator. So tactile, right? See if the joints move freely. Make an insertion and see if the juices run clear. That's another indicator. So you have visual indicator, tactile indicator, temperature indicator, 165. So I started at a high temperature just to get it going, and you can do like a compound butter if you want to take some shallot and some herbs and mix it in with some butter in a food processor. Take a compound butter and put it on the breast meat under the skin, between the meat and the skin. Now, some say, oh, it all melts away anyways, so it's kind of fruitless. And I mean, actually, is there no seeds in these? I was going to squeeze these into a cup, but it doesn't really look like there's any seeds. So just for insurance, I'll go right here first. Yeah, so compound butter, herbs, shallots.
And any salt in?
I'm sorry?
Salt in?
Yeah, liberally salt and pepper the exterior of the bird. Yeah. Now those drippings, the fat drippings, you can then take some of that fat, stir some flour in, so you've made a what? Fat plus flour, you've made a roux, right? Use that as a thickening for some stock, and there's your sauce. Right there. And it's 3 o'clock and I need to be feeding. Questions? Yeah, what are we gonna eat? Come on, miss. I was doing a class at a venue a couple weeks ago, and she said, okay, just stick to the recipe packet, man. Leave them wanting more. You always give them too much. And I'm like, why? I want people to get a good value. So, information overload, man. They have just as many notes on other topics as they do your recipes. Is that bad? No. Who would prefer I do not do that? Who would like me to proceed as usual? And those of you that didn't raise your hand, probably never come back again, right? All right. Well, how do we know if it's good? Single use. Oh, I didn't even have the lime juice. Look at that. Gee whiz. I want to taste it actually first, because here's the thing. And I'm not going to add that all at first. It's acidic, okay? Now, what I like to do with any cooking generally is get it near to where I want it with spices and herbs and stuff like that, and pepper, and some citrus zest and juice, because citric acid in the lime or lemon juice heightens and brightens and wakes things up. And then if at the end we need some salt, we salt, okay? So take it easy on the salt, go a light hand, and if we properly season our food with salt, we should feel no guilt in overconsumption of salt. That usually comes from eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of prepared foods. So we should feel no guilt in seasoning our food with salt, okay? But do I do it at the beginning or wait till the very end? We get it near to where we want it to be or assume it should be, and we taste, and no double dippies in my kitchen, please. Doesn't that irk you? You see those cats on TV? Like, I even see cooks that I respect doing that, and then they set this on the cutting board.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have opinions about a few things. Now, why would I smell it before I taste it? You have a lot more sensory indicators up here than right here. You can taste 4 things on your palate. What are they? Salt. It's nice and sweet from that squash, by the way. But I want some acid to balance that. Okay? I only used about 2/3 of that. And what was that? 2 limes? So it's a healthy dose of citrus. So I'm going to take it easy initially. But 1 or more of those were actually sweet, pretty darn sweet. So not only am I getting some flavor compounds, the aroma, by smelling it, I'm also waiting for it to cool down, okay? Because if I wait a few seconds for it to cool, I can run it across my tongue and get a more accurate assessment of the flavor. All right, so you're going to see Laura if you want some stocking stuffer DVDs. She has a lot of different classes, a lot of different demos that I've done all summer. You'll see things like what? Seared scallop on a fruit salsa. You'll see lobster fried rice. You'll see elk done a few different ways. You'll see steak applications. You'll see crepes. You'll see omelets. You'll see all kinds of stuff.
French toast.
So you're going to French toast. There you go. Hey, I got it finally. 2nd Avenue Home Decor right down the street. I'm doing a class on December 8th. Now you were at the last class I did down there. How was it?
That was very fun. All your classes are fun.
I pay her too.
We're going to have you come to our home. My neighbors came right after I told you they're here, and we're having you in January come to our home.
Cool. Very good.
Nothing like it.
Very good. So I do stuff in homes, whether it's a class, hands-on, or dinner, catering, that sort of stuff. What else is going on? I'm going to sell soups down at the 4 weeks of Eagle Christmas Market next Saturday, running for four consecutive Saturdays. And since there's no fresh produce really to do culinary demonstrations, I'm going to make soups and have them available, you know, like a $4 size to use as hand warmers as you're milling about, or a larger size to take home and have for a couple days. So, right down there, Heritage Park. Yeah, right here in the heart of downtown. So, how many of you attend the market? Go down there and shop for produce and stuff. You like it? What do you like about it?
The cooking demonstration.
Mom, I thought I told you to wait in the truck. Sorry. Thank you, Terry. I'm sorry. So sorry.
Yeah. No more plugs for you.
No, tell us about the fundraiser. What? Because
do you know how much
no,
money
shh,
you
hold on,
raised?
hold on. Don't talk about that yet. Let them know what the organization is, so if anyone else wants to be involved in future fundraising.
Oh, it was
So.
for Family Advocates. I'm on the board of directors for Family Advocates, and we did a gala fundraiser a week ago. I saw Cordell in the market, and we were looking for one more experience for our silent auction, and Cordell agreed to do a class for me. So 8 people in a class in their home setting. He agreed to donate the time, I agreed to donate the food for the demonstration. And I figured we might be able to get $150, maybe $200 for our organization. We provide a voice for children. Some of you may have heard of the CASA program. It's a court-appointed special advocates. So children that get into health and welfare system because of neglect or abuse benefit from this. They have a court-appointed guardian and an attorney that represent them in court. They don't represent the state, they don't represent the parents. And we also provide support for families. We have parent education classes. So Cordell was kind enough to agree. I think he thinks he got suckered into something.
No, I love to do
To do this for us. And we moved it to a live auction. We had several dinners with other chefs. $625 we raised. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Terry. I'm glad to be able to be involved. Is that an annual fundraiser?
It is, so I'll be hitting you up again next
No.
year. I had to quit bidding at $575. I couldn't believe it.
You'll be there anyways. I'll put an apron on you. You can be my assistant. All right?
I'll do the videotaping.
That's my job.
All right,
Okay, I'll
guys.
put the apron.
So how I might serve something like this is, and I'm sorry we're going a couple minutes over. Is this a bad thing?
No.
You sure? It tastes sweeter than the other squash I've used. It tastes sweeter than the ones I've done with banana squash recently. Because I had a big old 50-pound banana squash, so I made a few different batches of soup over a couple weeks' time for different events. And this one has some more sweetness to it. So a variety. It's probably coming from that sugar pumpkin, huh? And this butternut actually has a nice flavor, right? In fact, some of that liquid right there, let's just utilize that. So, and I'll auction these pieces off later. Oh, sorry.
$5.
You're halfway there to making the soup, right? So when you're seasoning something, you want to look fancy for your friends, what do? You just hold your hand up higher. The ones who laugh do not come to my demos regularly, obviously. The rest of you are tired of that joke. It's original material, man. So we're going to serve this to you in cups. But I just realized something, that rather than use a ladle, we use the pitcher that held the stock and just pour. It'll be easier to distribute, okay? So Cool. All right, any questions? You guys have been good. So let me just do a final taste here, see where we stand. So do you taste your food and season it before you serve your family?
Yes.
Every meal you prepare at home. This is your practice time, guys. Yes? Those that you have regular meals with, they're your guinea pigs, okay? Then you're used to it when you have a nice event, right? You're not wondering. Why? You're used to tasting. You're used to seasoning. You kind of know where you want it to be, roughly. And I know there are those who automatically salt and pepper the food once they get it in front of them. You know, it's a bummer kind of, I think. Right? Season it and serve it. Say, hey, at least taste a bite before you apply it, whatever. You know what it's kind of screaming for? It's like some fresh cilantro, maybe some basil, something like that. I didn't come bearing any fresh herbs, did I? I think it's good. I think it's good. It works for me. Maybe a little more salt.
Cordell?
Yeah, sir.
At that dinner at Rachel's, did you have a garnish on top of it?
We did. We actually did a cinnamon crouton. No sugar, but did a crouton, a bread crouton, just like you would make a crouton, cut into cubes, dress it with a little bit of oil that was seasoned with something, and we used a little bit of cinnamon, and I used chive oil. Okay, in this case, I'm going to drizzle. In fact, I'm going to drizzle a couple drops of sesame oil on it, because when it's hot in front of someone, it's wonderful. That's a wonderful aroma. What I'll do is I'll put a tablespoon in this entire batch now, so you have it in there with the flavors, because I don't know if we're going to garnish 50 little cups, okay? So you cool with that? Okay, so let me go like that and put in about a tablespoon. So we use cinnamon croutons. Again, infuse a little bit of oil or butter with some cinnamon. No sugar needed, guys. So you're just after the spice, right? Or is that an herb?
Spice.
Didn't realize the quiz is still going on. You're in detention now.
And that soup, cinnamon croutons. Huh?
Yeah, cinnamon croutons garnished this soup at a wine dinner at Rachel Case Bistro 1 month ago. Good. And you know what? I'm actually going to commandeer that ladle to serve you a sample. I'm going to bring that hot pan right over there to that towel. And I'll garnish that up in a second. I want to get this over there. Steady that as I pour, please. And what we'll do is half of it in there. So you know you need half of the room out of that. And here's the other half for the other half of the room. So once you have half of it distributed, you so yeah, just go ahead and pour half. Yeah, it's gonna be too much. Go halfway. Yeah. So something learned many years ago in cooking classes was that they all need to be portioned out before we start distributing, lest one part of the room gets that much and the other part gets that much. And the other part is running after me with this. So as long as you have 30 cups done with that pitcher, you're good. So what I would do is I would take some herbs probably, and first I'd probably do a drizzle. Now at that dinner you mentioned at Rachel K's, I did a chive oil. I took olive oil and a handful of fresh chives and whirled it in a blender for about a minute. Seasoned it with salt, and then put it in a squeeze bottle. Drizzle, drizzle, drizzle. It could be any herb. It doesn't have to be chives. It could be basil, cilantro, parsley. In this case, I'm hitting it with sesame oil because I wanted to use this fresh thyme I had sitting around. So this is actually lemon thyme. That's common thyme, either English or French. That's lemon thyme, it's a little lighter. I'll use a little sprig of each.
So is pastry your forte since you had two pastry?
I've
European
been
pastry
dual
chefs?
trained, actually, and it's actually not very common because that's a line that most chefs don't cross. Some go, I went pastry into savory, and some, I know very few who have gone savory into pastry. And but I did both. It was pretty close to simultaneous, but I had worked a couple years in resorts doing baking and pastry prior to getting serious, and some still question whether or not that ever really happened. What else was I gonna do? Right here. So yeah, once I got serious, I had already worked in the industry for I would take a couple of these guys and crisscross them right across one side of the bowl, like that. So.
Right now, are you ready to serve the bread yet?
I'm sorry? Yeah, we can serve all at the same time. Tell you what, I'll start, how you doing on portioning? Good. Tell you what, I'll start handing out twists, okay? What I'll do is if I pass this, so you're only touching the one you're taking, right? And I don't want to see anyone doing that on their lap, okay? Right? Like, I got 4. This doesn't seem like a good method. I'm going to employ a slightly different method. I'll use the pan.